Welcome to another episode of Breaking Into Cybersecurity, CISO Thursday. My fellow co-hosts are not able to make it with us, so it's just an intimate session with myself and our guest, Diana Kelley, today. But before we get to Diana, I'll recommend that everyone on LinkedIn, if you're following us, make sure you follow myself and Diana, as well as the show. For those of you on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and then the notification button right down below. That way you get that notification the next time we come on. And for those of you on podcasts, just follow us, give us a 10-star review, maybe 5, if that's all you can give, and then share it with all your friends and family. So back to our regularly scheduled broadcast. Diana, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Chris.
Would you like to share a little bit about your background and how you got into cyber and what was your journey?
Yeah, so I have it's a long career in cybersecurity. I actually fell in love with computers back in the 1970s, and I learned how to program a Texas Instruments calculator, and then my dad, who was a research professor at MIT Lincoln Labs, got me an account on the MIT PDP-10s and 11s at Tech Square, but they were connected into the DARPANET. Yeah, so this is the late 70s. And for anybody out there, it was not like it was today, believe me, not just in the fact that it was all green screen or amber screen and all command line interface, but also people just did not know about computers. They weren't woven into the fabric of our lives. But I fell in love because there was email, there was instant messaging. I was connected to people around the country that I could talk with, and there were games on there too. So I was like, this is the best. And that sort of led to a long love of computers and networking. So I actually went to school for English, but when I graduated, I was always the tech guy at all the publishing companies I worked for. And eventually someone saw what I was doing and said, look, I think you should be our head of network. And I said, but I'm not a tech person. I said, yeah, you're a tech person. And went from there to building and managing a global network for a startup in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And at this point now, it was time to get on the internet, because guess what, people? We used to make networks that were connected to nothing but ourselves. They were these little closed systems like terrariums, and it wasn't all wonderful like we have now, where we can all just be with everybody around the globe all the time. So finally, at this startup, we had built a global network, and now we connected into the internet. And within a few weeks, we had an FTP server. People could download patches there, and somebody exposed a vulnerability and got onto the network. And I realized at that point that no matter how much I built a beautiful network and all the time and effort I went into creating these systems that would help the business be better, that if there's some bad actor out there who's going to try and attack it, all that work is going to go for naught, and the business is not going to be able to function properly. So I said, look, I got to figure out the security stuff and focus on that, and work with the industry to make sure that we get security right, so that we can then go back to doing all these wonderful things. And at the time, someone said to me, you're an idiot, because the security stuff's going to be solved in a couple of years. So stay in just pure networking. Don't go into the security side. I said, but we got to get this right. Yeah. And as we all know, that advice from 25, 27 years ago was not quite accurate. Security did not get all solved. And then I had a really long odyssey throughout different roles in cybersecurity, because it's the incredible thing about security itself is in cybersecurity is that, it weaves through everything that we do. It's in technology, it's in the people, it's in the process, right? Our 3 pillars. But it's really, it's the underpinning of whether we can do what we want to achieve. Technology is incredible, but only if we can trust it to operate as expected, even when under attack. So I had to learn networking, obviously, and securing networking, but then I had to understand applications and how to secure applications, because all of a sudden I realized no matter what I do at the, up to layer 3, it's layer 7 that's giving us trouble. Then I had to learn people, because I realized people, if they're not have a secure mindset, then that's going to be where the attackers just look for your soft area. So it's been a long process of learning a lot of different parts of security, the whole different layers of the technical stack, interacting with people, and then starting to having to influence the highest ups in the chain in the company, because security back then and still today is often seen as a cost center and not as something that's really actually contributing to the bottom line. A little bit less so today. There's more awareness of how security can impact financials, but certainly, 25, 30 years ago, when you were talking to executives about investment in security, there was it was a heavy lift. So I had to learn, what went on, what mattered to the business, and how to make that argument in a way that was rational and compelling for executives, that investing in security or certain security technologies or training was the right thing for the business to keep it going.
Wow, there's so many things that I want to dive down deep in. You started with the networks, you went up the stack, then you figured out that there's people at the end of the stack. So now we had to secure the network, the technology, and the people. As you went through that journey, you learned everything. But today, people don't have to go through all that. How would you recommend someone that is interested in cybersecurity today, if they weren't interested in the network, they potentially weren't interested in the technology, but they were interested in the people, like your English major, your communications major? How do we get different points of view into this industry so that we could communicate better with the business to show them that value?
Yeah, I think it's partly on us as an industry to make it really clear that security does weave through the fabric of organizations. And I've been talking about business because the majority of my work has been at companies, but all organizations, higher ed, the public sector, there's the infrastructure, right? The security needs to be in all of these. And security is now, because it's across all of that, we need so many different viewpoints for a lot of different reasons. One is that we need to be able to think like the people that are attacking us, to understand, where they may try to hit us. And that means that attackers don't come in just one shape and size. Attackers come in many different shapes and sizes. So getting at many different people thinking about how could somebody get in, because otherwise you get into sort of simple think, and our brains are really interesting in that we're designed to have shortcuts. So if we keep doing the same thing again and again, we kind of shortcut there, and that, if it leads to a homogeneity of thought, which is wonderful for us when we're trying to do something fast, and excellent when you're trying to get to work and you've got a million things on your mind and you can multitask and just magically almost find your brain shortcuts, right? To, I have to take this turn and that turn. Not so good when we're trying to design systems that are resilient to many different kinds of attackers and mindsets. So as we're thinking in defensibility, as we're thinking through threat modeling, having different mindsets help, and bringing that into the industry, and being open to bringing those different viewpoints into the conversation. I've had, conversations with some really brittle thinkers who, if you don't know exactly this and exactly that, even, weird stuff, like back in the day when firewalls, that was it. Like firewalls were sort of what we did in security. So I would talk to somebody, we were trying to hire a firewall admin, and I'm like, they've got 5 years of experience with all these other products that are great and wonderful. Yeah, but they don't have experience with the one product we need. A firewall rule is they can learn it pretty quickly. That's not a big bridge, but being brittle about, but it's not exactly what I want. So we have that a lot. If they don't know exactly what I think they need, they're not security people. So opening up our own thought processes, our aperture of what is security, so that we can bring that diversity in to the work, but also helping people to understand that there's a lot of different work. You had this beautiful way of saying, like, I hadn't thought of it that way, but I kind of went from the basement, up to the elevator a little bit in my work. And people a lot of times it's like, it's the hacker in the hoodie. I have to be super technical. So many people say to me, but I'm not a technical person. I don't want to go and attack things. And it's like, that's fine. Are you a lawyer? Because boy, do we need lawyers in this to help understand a large variety of policy, how we respond to things like cyber insurance, even how we write our agreements with our partners. are you really good? Are you drawing? Are you great at drawing? Are you an illustrator? Because some people are visual thinkers, and you can paint a wonderful picture with words, but a picture paints 1,000 words. So we need fantastic graphic designers. I've been so lucky to have some really tough technical ideas translated by brilliant illustrators and graphic designers into something that so many people can consume and understand. We need communicators, because what we're doing in cybersecurity is difficult for some people to understand, because there may be a technical aspect. The other thing is that it can be scary. So communication skills and people who understand how to communicate in crisis. So many, this is a tiny sliver of the kinds of diverse jobs are available. So we need to bring diversity of thought in. We also have a diversity of jobs available. So anybody that's thinking of coming in and thinking, well, I don't want to be in the basement, I'm not technical. There's a lot more jobs out there that we need people on.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of our viewers, Gary Wright, mentions so many shapes and sizes as well as dimensions in cybersecurity, which adds layers of complexity, which makes me want to pivot to kind of back to the comment that you mentioned, where threat actors come in either way, but they don't need certifications, they don't need degrees, they don't need all the requirements that we've been putting on our candidates to try to get into the industry. What can we do to change that?
You are exactly right. I mean, is that a cyber criminal who's got into your system? Did they get a master's degree? And
or a CISSP,
or a CISSP even? It's to start thinking about truly what credentials you need those people to have, and being a little bit more realistic with some of the job descriptions. And I don't mean to over-gender this, but there have been strong research that shows that in general, women will not apply for a job if they don't have about 90% of what's requested in the job description. And men will apply for the job at closer to 60%. And what has happened is a lot of the job descriptions come out with this, they'll say, well, if people are going to apply at around the 60% mark, and I don't think it's a conscious thing. I think it's just we've gotten kind of used to it. So, I better write a whole bunch of stuff, and that means I'll get somebody that's hitting me at about 60%. So they might put in, I want X number of credentials, whether it's Security Plus, CISSP, or
pull your mic up.
Oh, my mic up.
Yeah.
It's actually down. Is that better?
I think the other one is clicking.
Oh, okay.
I think that's the one that's on right now.
Okay, let me see what it seems to be picking up. Hold on. No, it's picking up this one, but sometimes this one clicks and people hate it. So let me go to a different one.
Okay, because I hear when you move your hands. That's why I wanted to.
Okay, so now I'm on this mic. Yeah, I don't know what my Yeti is. But so people will wear these job descriptions that are very aspirational, and that contributes to people thinking, well, I need to have all of these different, I need a PhD, I need to have all these certifications. But the people that are hiring, they don't really need all of that. They're just trying to sort of stack up the job description to get somebody at that 60% mark. So maybe we can just step back, everybody, and truly think about what experience do you need from that employee for that job? What experience can you give them or get them to, if that's going to be something that's required at the company? So some companies will say, we need Security Plus or CISSP. Do you need it when you hire a person, or is that something that you can fund for them so that they learn up in the job? And then maybe you say, look, if you do that, you're going to stay with us for a year so that you get a lower attrition rate. So stepping back and being more reasonable about what you really need for that job, I think will help a lot with hiring, rather than just saying, oh, I'm just going to default out to we need a 4-year computer science degree. I've seen jobs where, they say like, experience is not the same as having the degree. It needs 4-year computer science. And that would cut me out. Here, I've been doing this for 30 years. Whatever I could have learned back in the 80s in college wouldn't be very applicable now. But exactly. So people thinking about their, rethinking how they write those job descriptions and truly what they need for that employee.
And then if they could even potentially sub it out even more, where they could bring in a junior level and a mid level for that senior level role that they were looking to fill. And then now they have two bodies that they could grow up and create a talent pipeline within the organization and continue that going forward. They would also potentially have less attrition going on as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And you make a good point, which is pipeline. And that's another thing that we've started to see in the field is that people will get it's very hard to get the entry level job, but then they finally get that job, but then they don't know where to go. And if you're hiring people without having some sort of a plan for them, you're going to have a small portion who love that, because some people, they're like, this is my job, I want to do it, and I don't want more pressure, I want to stay exactly where I am. And that's great. But there are also a lot of people that want to understand that there's a path for them and a place for them to grow in the organization. And if they can't see that and don't have help with it, they're going to go, and rehiring is extremely expensive and disruptive.
And you mentioned like they don't see that future. How can we even shift seeing that future back to elementary schools, high schools, where they see someone like yourself that they can model? They see um, Hispanics, they see blacks, they see all different colors, as well as neurodiverse, as well as individual doing analyst work or coding work, or all the different things that we do. It feels like Hollywood just shows the quick hack or the breaking into the bank, and then that's it. But it doesn't show the diversity of roles that we have, that we can stimulate the next generation in coming into this industry.
I actually started. I've had to stop doing it because of other commitments. But I founded this series called My Cyber Why, and the entire reason I founded it was that I realized that in my work, I was running into people in security that were doing so many jobs I didn't know existed. And that one of the first ones in that series is a person named Tomi Salmenpää, who is the head of security for Finland's equivalent of FAA, but also because the airspace there needs to be collaboration in air
Mhm.
safety. There are also international organizations that look at the safety of the airspace, and he participates in those too. And when I met him, I was just completely floored at the work he was doing. And I realized there's this whole other part of cybersecurity that I didn't even know about. I knew about the code on the planes itself and the security
Mhm.
of that, but not the kind of work he was doing. So I created this series, My Cyber Why, and it was a celebration of people doing jobs you probably didn't know existed all around the world for cyber, and what the incredible diversity of those jobs, and also students and what students were studying, because it just, like, Ellen Zhu is one of the guests, and she's 16 years old. She's a cyber patriot, has competed in CTFs, and just incredible work at 16. So if you were thinking, well, I have to wait till I'm older, that was an example of, no, you can get started pretty early in this. So I think the more that we talk about it, and the more that we help to showcase all the rich, life's rich pageant of jobs in cybersecurity, I think the more people will, younger people or people who are reskilling, thinking of going into the field, will see, oh, there is a place for me, and represent. And that's why share the mic, pass it around, make sure that we don't keep talking to just the same people, but when we've got people that are out there talking about security, that we help to amplify the wonderful, rich diversity of people who are cyber defenders.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, for example, the whole Cyberhuman initiative, one of our founders, their son is 16 years old and was interested in this program, where we connect them with a diverse set of training resources that are all low cost and free for them to explore where in cybersecurity that they wanted to go. And they were an above average pushing teenager, but they wanted to do this program and they were so interested in it. They knocked out 100 hours of training in no time. Like, we were expecting they would take
Amazing.
2 or 3 months to do it, and they were done in 1 month because they were just so passionate about it.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. And you mentioned like cybersecurity in physical things. We often
Yeah.
forget that operational technology have computers in them. Cars, planes, trains, automobiles, gas pumping stations. All of these have technology in them, and they need individuals to keep them going, to protect them.
Yeah, it's at one point the average the average new sedan, car had more lines of code in it than Windows. And we forget that we're driving computers now, we're flying in computers. The thing that's keeping our food cold is the computer, and very often connected to televisions are absolutely computers. In fact, to the point that you get a new television now, and the first thing it asks is for you to log into your Google ID.
So you can update it.
Yeah.
So I know you're a part of this amazing organization called the Cyber Future Foundations. Whoops, right
Yeah.
here. What's the mission behind the Cyber Futurists Foundation?
Yeah, this Cyber Future Foundation, which was started by Val Mukherjee, and I'm the board for, is really about connecting technology and the business, because there does need to be this communication and this bridge between what's happening in business and how technology fits into that. But we've grown in a variety of ways to figure out how we solve that very large problem. Where are the particular areas where we can make a difference? And so one of the areas that we've made a difference is in humanitarian work. And right now there was with Afghanistan, helping people there, whether it's to give them secure communication so that they can get out, or to help the aid organizations that are to secure them so that they can help the people get out. And then once people are out of countries, when they're as refugees, how do you help to reskill them? And we're now working with Ukrainian organizations to help there during the war. So in addition to that, we also have a cyber workforce initiative, and we are celebrating and trying to help solve the problem of this cyber workforce gap at Cyber Talent Week. It's coming up in I think it's 2 weeks from now, the week of April 19th. It's going across the entire nation. We've got virtual events starting in the West for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and a wonderful set of speakers and panels for people that would like to join us. You could sign up. And then we're going to land for the last 2 days of the conference in person in the Washington, D.C. area at George Mason University. So if anybody can join us at George Mason, we're bringing together some of the key stakeholders from private and public sector to not just have a conversation about the fact that there's a problem, but to try and really define what it is we can come together to do next to truly address the problem. Because we know that there's open headcounts. Companies are trying to hire people in security. They can't. They're also having trouble hanging on to people in security. But we have what's very sad. That headline kind of makes you think, oh, that means if I get a degree in cyber, I get a certification, I'm just going to have this wonderful set of rich opportunity, and everyone's going to try and hire me. I heard somebody the other day say, oh, when somebody comes out of cyber, if they can code and defensively, they can make $500,000 a year the day that they graduate. And I was like, maybe some, but I certainly know many people who have gone through programs, come out with degrees, graduated top of their class. It takes them months to get a job. And something back to what we were talking about, that job description, the ATS, the applicant tracking systems, they do keyword matching. And sometimes people with good degrees get ready to work will get rejected from literally hundreds of submissions that they enter into these online job boards. So there continues to be a problem. There's also that problem of once we've gotten people into the field, how do we keep them in, especially with, what's your path? And as you were talking about earlier, diversity. If you get into an organization that doesn't value diversity of thought, it's very easy for people to say, why am I in this business at all? So then they leave, and we've lost someone who's trained up, that was ready to be a really valuable part of the cybersecurity workforce, but for the reason of it wasn't working for them, has now left, and now we're even more, we have to find even more people to fill. Let's not fill a pipe that's so leaky that we lose some of the best assets. Let's really make sure that we've got a very strong pipe. And so that's what Cyber Talent Week is about. It's not just saying, oh, we need more diversity. It's really coming together and saying, what can we do as a community right now to make sure that we're going to keep more people, getting more people in cyber and keeping them in cyber because they're thriving there.
Wow, that's so enriching, because I know I've talked about this, and I've reached out, for example, to my local school district and offered help, like, how can I help with this? And what I found out is that there's some large organizations, I'll just say a 3-letter cloud service provider, that the school district actually outsources their training to. They because they don't have enough teachers to do the training, that they work with like a cloud service provider to be able to provide that training to them. And I on the cloud service providers aspect, that's amazing that you're willing to invest the resources in the communities that you're working in to grow that pipeline for the future, and not just see that they're just hiring people today, but they're investing in the next generation as well.
Yeah, a lot of big technology companies I have in my history. I've worked for IBM, I've worked for Microsoft, so I know what they do from a real experience. But I've seen other large, Amazon and Google. There's a lot of work going from the large providers saying that, understanding that this is a problem and trying to address it. And one of the things that we're trying to do with Cyber Future Foundation, and why we're bringing together stakeholders at Cyber Talent Week, is that as we have so many wonderful initiatives occurring in sort of these atomic pockets, could we start to bring this together so that we can work as an organized community and be even stronger together as we address the problems?
Yeah, and one of the other initiatives that I work towards is helping veterans that are coming out of the military. Most of these individuals have had some sort of IT and security training just because they've had to be in a secure environment, yet they forget how to highlight their transferable skills coming out of the military, and rely on, oh, I've been a vet, or I'm a vet, to try to get a role. But you're finding that you're not getting the roles, or that they're lost trying to get into cybersecurity, because oftentimes they don't know where to look. So with the whole cyberhuman initiative, we also help them figure out like where they want to go, what they want to do, and then help them with the branding. Like, let's figure out those transferable skills. Let's highlight how you've done identity and access management, how you've done writing security policies, or at least the ability to look at regulations and then figure out a policy from there. Because a policy is really just rules and regulations that someone has to follow. And it's not that hard to really take it from the military or the medical industry and go to another industry. But I think in security, we think, oh, we're a special snowflake that we can't get other people into the industry from. And I think that's also a mindset that we need to shake ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, and again, opening up, what we think is a good person to be part of our our industry. You talked about neurodiversity, for example. I'm dyslexic, and that's something that, luckily, are you dyslexic too?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
I'm ADHD.
Okay. So yes, we're neurodiverse, and yet we are in this industry, and we have thrived. I have friends who are autistic. Nicola Whiting is one of the best proponents about autism, and why you would want to hire someone who's autistic, rather than saying, oh well, I see that as a disability, or something. Actually, the benefits of hiring somebody with that background. And the same with veterans. They have skill sets that transfer. So let's see how they transfer well. And let's also, as managers and hiring people, also be careful too, to understand who you hire and how you hire and how to help them thrive. Because PTSD is something that's now getting talked about more and more in cybersecurity because it's high stress. We can't solve the problem. It's like people are like, why can't you fix it? Because it's not like, oh, I'll just tick that button and now everything's safe. So PTSD is coming, and we work very long hours under high stress. A lot of veterans have PTSD. So if you're hiring one, understanding that you're going to get a lot of skills, but also being a manager that's compassionate to help them thrive and be successful. Just because somebody has something like me, you and I were both dyslexic. So if somebody gave us a speed reading test, maybe we're not going to do as well as the next person. But we're fantastic employees. So being the kind of employer that understands the who you hired, the benefit of it, and also protecting them so that they can do their job really well. The saying of people don't leave companies, they leave managers, I've seen that to be most of the time true. Like 80% of the time. I think that's very, very accurate. So when we talk about attrition in the field, I think part of it is because we just do not maybe we don't take the time to truly understand how to help that person thrive. And when you do, you find that these employees are so different, but you start putting together a team. I had a team at one point, and I just kind of stepped back and I was like, it's almost like I had built a puzzle. And because each one they were very different. Some were edge pieces, some were just that middle piece that you absolutely needed. They were very, very different people, but when you put them together, it was a beautiful picture.
Wow, you just gave me goosebumps because I just took my Myers-Briggs strengths assessment, and I have maximizer as the second strength that I have, and that's one of those skills that being able to see how your different team players can interconnect so you can make such a strong team instead of just looking at these are all the gaps that we have, but filling the gaps together to show how you could be a strong team together.
Yes. Yeah. And not trying to fit a round peg in a square hole, like looking at being different in a puzzle is actually it's a good thing because that makes you fit everything together.
Absolutely. So one of the other things that I wanted to talk, as you mentioned, we'll go back to that elevator metaphor, and we're coming out of the network technology and people. Now your network is not as much on premise anymore. Your network is in the cloud. So we have to start to think differently. What are some of the ways that we can enable future generations to step away from this is how things were and this is how things are to really maximize the benefit of using cloud solutions? Because I think just picking it up from the basement and trying to put it in the cloud isn't going to work.
Yeah, I was since my career started when it was all very, very, I mean, the first network I worked on was coax. I mean, come on. It's for a while there. I was like,
Cable
oh,
taps.
yeah. Somebody would kick under the desk, and I was like running through the office trying to figure out what was disconnected. But so I was kind of like a little bit kicking and screaming going into the cloud. But the cloud is, look, this is it. This is the future, and the economies of security scale that we can realize in the cloud are just fantastic. If you've got employees that are a little stuck in the past and frightened of the future, very often that's about education. And it's not just, I want you to go to this conference. Talk to the employee and find out how they learn and what's going to be best for them. Maybe it's going to be experiential. Maybe it is going to a conference. Maybe it's going to a university class. Maybe it's getting a certificate. Could be buying a book. People learn in very different ways, but working with them and making sure that they get the education and then the experience to feel more comfortable with the advances, because the cloud is the future. If you don't feel comfortable, and it's true, I know some folks that, they've been doing this a little bit longer. They feel comfortable with what they feel comfortable with, but cloud is, if you don't understand the cloud, and if you don't understand what's, the advances in technology, you're not going to be able to secure your modern workforce. But it goes back to education. Just make sure that it's education that's going to help them and not just the education you think they need.
Absolutely. And I think when you think of educating your stakeholders, don't just think about the cybersecurity folks and the IT folks. Also think about the business, because the business hears, oh, we're going to the cloud. They don't know what that means. They don't know what that investment might mean, how things change, how you might have to adapt the applications, that there might be downtime, that there might be delays in feature releases. But you wait a little bit now and it'll help you in the future kind of approach. So you also have to educate your business stakeholders on what that transition means, that you're going to the cloud, and how it will benefit them, even though there might be some short-term step backs as you invest in that migration.
And that learning curve, yeah. And the last couple of years, I've been doing vCISO work, and most of the time, fractional CISOs are with smaller companies. And so I was, be talking to the CEO or the CIO about what they're, the security in the cloud, and very often I would hear back, well, we're in GCP, AWS, or Azure, all fantastically, robust for security clouds. So since I'm in one of these clouds, isn't everything secure? Like, pretty much they thought because they acquired, they were subscribed to the services in that cloud, that then everything was secure. And it's like, no, there's a shared responsibility model, and the cloud provider, sure, you're right, the electricity, that is on them, but access control to your data, that's still on you to make decisions, smart decisions, like turning on MFA. So yet those conversations can be pretty tough with executives, because they feel like, well, but I paid for the best cloud I could. Why isn't it just entirely secure automatically?
As well as the shared responsibility model. I think that's the
Yeah.
most often overlooked concept
Yes.
of the cloud, is that there's
Yeah.
a shifting layer of who does what between you and the service provider
Yeah.
based on what solutions you're using, whether it's infrastructure as a service or software as a service, who
Yep.
does what for you. And ultimately, the data that you own, you're always responsible for it. I
That's
think
right.
that's often forgotten. Like, you put all your data in the cloud, but you still have to secure it. The cloud provider is just providing you that plate to hold it on while it's in the cloud. You still have to put your controls around it to protect it.
Yeah, I used to, when I was at Microsoft, I would use the analogy of a bank, right? The bank is making sure that your money is safe, but if you choose to take all your money out and spend it, or you write a check and you have an overdraft, right? That's on you. It doesn't mean just because it's in the bank that you don't also have responsible decisions about how you use that. Then, same with your data. You have decisions to make about how you use your data and protect it.
One of the questions from our audience, as we were talking about education a little bit ago, was, "Hey, Christophe, she said the magic word book. I wonder if there's a specific cloud book that Diana might recommend."
Well, I'm a huge fan of Threat Hunting in the Cloud, which just came out. It's by Abbas Kudrati, sorry, Abbas, and Chris Pereiras. And it's a really good book. I love it because it's about how you look at threats across all the different multiple clouds. And because so many of us, we're all in many different clouds. Who's in just one cloud? So I really like this just across the cloud view that it has.
Well, let's talk about this concept of threat hunting, since you brought it up, because oftentimes some of our audience may or may not know a lot about security. So, how do you describe the concept of threat hunting?
Yeah, threat hunting is a proactive approach to looking for problems within your organization. If you heard the term SOC, Security Operations Center, and you're running like a SIM, security, events and information management, you'll get kind of alerts within the SOC saying there seems to be a problem here, and the person who goes out and looks at that problem, they're usually called an analyst or an investigator. And then a threat hunter is someone who goes and looks around the organization for IOCs, indicators of compromise. Those are a little after the fact. So an alert could be an IOC, but an IOC could come out in a threat in an intel brief that says, look, if you see this particular exe anywhere, you see this library anywhere in your organization, or look for this kind of activity in your directory server, for example. Those indicators of compromise, you go out and look at them, but that means that somebody's already gotten in. And that's a threat hunter can do that. Threat hunters also do a lot of time very proactive, which is looking for IOAs or indicators of attack. And that's before there's been a compromise, but it's the equivalent of looking at who's rattling the door, who may have gotten in but hasn't actually exfiltrated data yet. So the threat hunters are the ones that take the things like the IOAs, the IOCs, and sometimes the alerts, but a lot of times that may be another person. And they go through and they see if they can find if there's anything within the organization that may not have been a big breach yet, but is an indicator that there could be a breach that somebody's gotten in and they could be doing, or if somebody is doing reconnaissance. They could also, you could see something like chatter on the web that could indicate that there's some kind of attack against you, and the threat hunter is going to help to find and uncover that.
So it sounds like the skills needed to do this role is a lot of curiosity, a lot of digging through the logs and looking for information, and then really being able to digest the information from threat intelligence feeds that come in and see how that applies to your organization.
Yep. Yeah. Know your systems, and honestly, actually have good intuition, because a lot of the threat hunters that I speak with, they'll say like, well, it just seemed a little bit off. Like all the way back to the very famous book, Cliff Stahl's, The Cuckoo's Egg, about that 20-second, there was 20 seconds missing in a log file. And he's like, that doesn't seem right. And other people were like, that's ridiculous. Well, it turned out that there was an attack coming all the way from Germany to California, which is not big now, but when the book was written, it was kind of unusual, because he had, he knew it wasn't right, and he had this intuition of like, I just know that my systems, would not have dropped that. That's not the way these systems work. So it also helps to know how your organization works, what looks normal, and having really good intuition too of that doesn't look right, and then the technical ability to go in and validate, nope, it's not right, and guess what? There was a bad guy trying to get in.
Wow. Yeah, one of the things that I like to do is, as individuals talk about roles, I like to talk about the knowledge, skills, and abilities that someone needs, because those align to the NIST NICE framework that someone who is looking to get into this industry can potentially look at. They could look at the NIST NICE framework, see the skills, abilities, and knowledge that someone might need to know in a particular role, and then see if that interests them and potentially investigate it further. One of the things that I always recommend is networking with individuals like yourself, and reaching out and potentially having, hey, what's a day in your life like,
Yes.
to see if they would like to sit at a SOC desk and be a SOC analyst, or to be a threat hunter, or whatever the role is, to really see if that aligns with their strengths and their passions. Because if you're someone that likes to talk to someone, being at a SOC desk is not the right path for you, because you're engaging with the screen versus having a conversation like this. So it takes a totally different mindset to that approach.
And I love what you said about just go out, network, see that go to conferences, start talking to people, reach out to people on LinkedIn. A lot of people, we're all busy. We all want to help. We're all busy. So you may have to reach out to 10, 15 people before you get somebody at exactly the right time, and they're going to help you. People are, not being rude, just sometimes people are busy, but yeah, we do want to help others and talk about what we've done. And then if you can find somebody either at your organization or through networking that will let you shadow them, it's just such a powerful way to understand the different jobs. I mean, it's interesting. You think about doctors, right? They have to go through rotations. So you get your medical degree, but then you have to go through rotations, and you have to spend some time in surgery and spend some time in psychiatry, and before you pick what you're going to do for your specialty for the rest of your career. And in cybersecurity, we don't have anything formal like that, but it's a fantastic way to learn the different jobs. And you may find out that something you didn't think that you were right for, you start doing it. After you shadow somebody, you do it with them, or you see what they do, and it's like, wow, mind blowing. I've had mentees that really didn't think they were suited for one kind of job or another, and then had the opportunity to do it. And just it took a very strong pivot. And sometimes it's something sort of oddball, like, well, being an analyst and deciding I'm going to go be a lawyer, and now I'm going to be a lawyer who focuses on cybersecurity policy. Or it could be someone, to your point, that really thought, I think I'm in the, I mean, I'm an example of it. I kind of thought I was in the data center person, in the in the climate controlled with all the humming around me, and that's where I was going to stay because I'm an introvert. And I found out that no, I really, really liked actually influencing, even though it's hard for me. I liked influencing how the company was going to make security decisions, and not just being the one that was implementing them.
That you touched on an approach that I'm really passionate about, and it sidelines with almost like an apprenticeship like program, because
Yes.
they do it in the medical field, they do it in the electrical field, they do it in so many trades where you have on the job training, as well as you have to have certain types of knowledge or continuous education. And I think if cybersecurity took that approach, we really could have a great pipeline of junior through senior level people that are continuously developing versus just looking for those mid senior level people. And then the other thing that you kind of talked on with influencing is there's a track, creating separate tracks for people that like to lead people and people
Yes.
that like to just do the techie things. And they
Yes.
both can continue to grow throughout their career, and they don't have to become a people manager. They can stay and do their techie things and create innovations and patents and all sorts of
Yeah.
engineering stuff, but they don't have to lead people. And then the people that like to lead people, they can manage, they can
Let them
help
lead.
manage, they can help influence.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that that's the next. We still have a big problem getting more people excited about entering cybersecurity, keeping them in. But we also have this problem, sort of, as you're pointing out, in that sort of mid phase of people's career. Because if you ask somebody in security, what do you want to be when you grow up? Um, CISO, right? That's sort of like the CISO does not have to be, all roads don't lead to CISO necessarily. In cyber, we need to I think start celebrating and highlighting the late stage in their career cybersecurity people that aren't CISOs. I mean, CISOs are incredible, and it's amazing for people who do CISO work, but it's not the only way to be a mature senior leader within cybersecurity. So I think we need to celebrate that, because we focus so much on it. And I've talked to people who say, I don't think I want to be a CISO when I'm, when I'm like 40 or 45. And I'm like, well, that's okay. And
Yeah.
they're like, well, but I shouldn't be in cyber. I'm like, yeah, you should. Let's find a path that's going to work for you.
Yeah, you could be the person developing the better way that the internet should work, instead of being just an
Yes.
open set of connections that we then have to secure on the back end. Find a more secure way to communicate and share and transfer information while
Yeah.
still keeping it available to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Because I mean, there's so much work, and now you look at and people might say, oh, well, but the work, it hasn't. You look at all the working groups that are going on now with trust over IP, and how are we going to deal with trust over IP? There's questions to do about quantum. What do we do about AI and ML? And potential bias and ethical issues in there, and actually creating resilient AI and ML. There's so many new things on the horizon, and we need people thinking about security in those, and strong leaders leading standards bodies and thought around how we do the work. So I agree with you. It's let's get more people in cyber, but also let's keep them and give them paths other than right now just that one of like CISO or bust.
Yeah, absolutely. And each of those topics that you mentioned could be an entire series of podcasts. I mean, people
Yeah.
group together AI ML and expect that it would work, but you don't think about nefarious models within those MLs, or that the bias that's included in there because a certain subset of people created that model and it only thinks like that certain subset of people. Whereas if you had diverse people helping to create those models, then your AI model or ML model will come out with a totally different answer because it had diverse inputs.
Absolutely. I did actually a whole class on this for LinkedIn Learning on failure modes in AI and ML, inspired by the great work of Ram Shankar, who's just wonderful, who created a wonderful framework on failure modes in AI and ML. And I sort of took that as a starting point and created this class. And yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. Once you start getting into it, you understand that, it's not, there's a lot of work that we need to do as security experts to secure it. And to your point, Chris, about the cloud is different than on-prem, AI and ML is different than just writing, code that, it's a big difference if you've got a system saying, oh, I read that radiograph, that x-ray, and you do or you don't have stage 4 cancer, versus I tried to open this app on my phone and it crashed. Like, it's a very different experience because we tend to believe what machines tell us. If you multiply 2 10-digit numbers together on a calculator, you don't go, oh, you know what? I'm just going to double check that and make sure that machine did that right. And then you go hand to do that multiplication, right? You take that as like, oh, that's gospel. That's right. Whatever the calculator told me. Well, with AI and ML, we're going to trust them more and more. So we need to have people really focusing on this problem so that if the autonomous car says that's not a stop sign, I'm going through it, and it's really a stop sign, that, people don't get killed.
Or there's the I joke because this is a joke that comes from Belgium, but it's you're on a bike and you have a child and a nun in front of you. Which one do you hit? You can't.
Oh, no.
You can't swerve around them, so you have to hit one of them, the child or the nun, and then you put that into, now you have an autonomous car and it has to make that decision. Like, how does it choose where to go? And
did you say that was a joke, Chris?
it's a Belgian joke where they have a lot of nuns and you get bonus points for hitting the nuns.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Don't be a nun in Belgium, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It doesn't translate as well in English, but that's the premise of it. But you
Okay.
have AI models that are going to be making ethical decisions, and how do you ensure that the right ethics has been programmed into the code that makes these decisions? And I think those are the things that we have to think about in the future, and how can we have the right people creating that code from different backgrounds. And because, like, you misinterpreted that joke, someone from Africa might code something totally different than someone from North America. So these cars that might go all around the world, they might have different traffic patterns, they might have different approaches, different priorities. For, I don't know, in India, where they value the cow as a sacred animal, they might choose not to hit the cow and to hit something else. Like, you don't know how these people will make ethical decisions. So how do we program that into future models? And then how could someone attack it and you make sure that it hasn't deviated from how it should be making decisions?
That's exactly it. And understanding, the things like reward hacking. And if you've got, a system that starts to reward hack, it could create more problems rather than solving problems. And if the data that you have is bias, then the outcome that you're going to have from the system is going to be bias. And if sometimes we have biased data, there's a great example of a large company that was doing hiring, and they were looking at their existing developers. I'm not saying that the developers should have been this makeup, but their existing developers. Somebody at one point was like, women can code. So I'm not saying women can't code. Of all people, I know women and support. But this company's existing workforce was very slated to men. And then their hiring algorithm was starting to not just look for men for programmers and to reject women, based on people's names. You can kind of guess, but also it started oddly focusing on like men whose names were Jared and played lacrosse. And they were looked at the highest. They were like, oh, that's a really good candidate, which is bizarre because those two things do not impact, to my knowledge, whether somebody can code well. So we have to be really careful about the data that we put into the systems too.
Exactly. I know Google has had a couple gaffes where their neural network misclassified animals and people, and like that's the type of thing that we have to worry about when now you have security systems with cameras everywhere and people are making decisions that, oh yes, you were in this spot because the grainy camera footage says it looks like you, it has the same gait as you, it has the same height and weight as you, therefore it's you, when it might not have been you. So how do you provide evidence contrary to those things? But wow, we've just went off the track. So let's just remind folks, there is the Cyber Future Foundation's Talent Week happening across the United States in 2 weeks, starting on Monday, April 19th, going across and then finishing off in DC. What are some of the types of talks that we expect to have over that week?
We're going to be talking about why people are not getting into the industry. We'll be talking about networking and how you can make the best use of your networking, and looking at, again, attrition rates and how we can reduce those attrition rates by ensuring that we're creating environments that we don't just hire diversely, but we include working environments that allow diverse people to stay in those roles and to thrive in those roles. And also, again, starting to look at what we can do going forward. So what are some action steps that we can actually take? It's wonderful to talk about it. The discussion needs to start, and that's where any solution begins, but then starting also to look at what are the steps that people can take and what we can do. And we would love everybody, because it does start with the discussion, and we need as many voices and ideas and brains on this as possible. So the more people that can participate, the better. We welcome you. We hope that you can come in and participate in the program, and to start, in this engage in the discussion, and then in taking the action to address the cyber workforce
Absolutely
issues.
And the web address for that is cyberfuturefoundations.org, and then from there you can find Cyber Talent Week 2022 CTW, and that would be the web page, the landing page for that conference. So go ahead, join us. And Diana, thank you so much for coming on today and having this great conversation, both about your experiences as well as some of the ways that we can improve hiring within cybersecurity. Any final words of advice that you would want to give?
Just, we need, if you don't think there's a place for you in cybersecurity, you just haven't talked to the right people. There's a place for everybody, and just find your people, find the people to connect to, and look for people that are going to support you, because this is a big problem. It's a dimension of attack. Attackers are going after critical infrastructure. So, we need, as I said, we need more and more people to really help keep our country and each other safe. So please join us at Cyber Talent Week. Join us in the cybersecurity industry. And if you meet somebody who tells you you don't belong, they're the ones that don't belong. So find Chris, find me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. For those of you on LinkedIn, follow myself and Diana Kelley. For those of you on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and the notification button down below. And then for those of you on podcasts, share this with all your friends and family. Thank you all. Have a great Thursday.
Thank you.